We'll find a way, Professor. We always have.
There are no simple answers, but here are 10 reasons grocery store food prices will keep rising. Fertilizer Foul Up.
What is this powder?
Fertilizer.
When you think about the world's many pressing problems, you probably don't think about fertilizer. However, there are experts that have been sounding the alarm about the growing problems with chemical fertilizer. A shortage of the chemicals used to make crop fertilizers threatens to exacerbate food shortages. The rising cost of these fertilizers is one of the reasons behind rising food prices. Nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus-based fertilizers have helped greatly expand crop yields and feed many more millions of people around the world. These crucial chemicals are produced in different places around the world, but an increasingly big manufacturer is China. Unfortunately for other countries, the communist country stopped exporting the fertilizers when it realized its supplies were dwindling. The other two big suppliers are Ukraine and Russia, and their ongoing war continues to disrupt both countries' production and shipment of the chemicals used to make fertilizers. Fertilizer prices have skyrocketed as a result, as much as 78% since 2021, and this will continue to affect food prices for everyone. If farmers stop using these expensive fertilizers, crop yields will drop, which would also lead to higher prices. Low energy.
Remember one thing, that is more than just a tanker of gas. That is our lifelines.
Unfortunately, prices are up on both gasoline and diesel, and part of the reason is a drop in oil production. Policies put in place by the U.S. government over the past year and a half have contributed to a decrease in oil exploration and drilling in the United States. Russia and Ukraine are also big players in the global energy market, and as long as the war continues to hurt production and shipments, there will be greater uncertainty about the global supply of oil. Rising inflation has also been a growing problem over the last year and a half because it dips into everyone's wallet. This means prices are up across the board, and not just for consumers. Trucking and railroad freight companies are also feeling the pinch, as both are paying quite a bit more for fuel. Air freight is relatively expensive in good times, and now airlines are paying a lot more for jet fuel than they were a year ago. Transportation costs have gone up across the board, making this one of the reasons grocery store food prices will keep rising. Gas prices have fallen recently, but this might actually be a bad sign, as some experts think the lower prices reflect decreased global demand. Corn in a hole.
Surprise! Get that corn out of my face!
The line between food and energy is blurring in the United States as more and more corn is used to make ethanol instead of being used for food production. As much as 37% of the corn grown in the United States will never make it to your table because it's turned into fuel. Ethanol is mixed with a lot of the gasoline you buy at the pump because the mixture produces a cleaner burning fuel. Ethanol might be a good idea, but every ear of corn that ends up in your car's gas tank is an ear of corn that cannot be eaten. A lot of us like food and don't like math, but when it comes to corn, the numbers are clear. The decision to use a lot of corn to produce biofuel has decreased the amount of corn available to food manufacturers to make a whole host of products, from cornbread to corn oil. With less corn available to make food, corn prices have risen. One of the frustrating things about corn prices rising is that it is mostly self-inflicted, with a conscious choice to use a significant amount of the corn crop for energy rather than food. Perhaps this policy made more sense when food and energy prices were substantially lower than they are today. Weed killer woes.
What's that? Herbicide? What a joke!
Most of us have never heard of glyphosate, and until recently, there was no reason why we should have heard of this boring-sounding chemical. However, this boring-sounding chemical is an effective weed killer used by farmers around the world. This and other weed killers allow farmers to produce more crops than they would otherwise be able to. Because glyphosate is such an effective weed killer, farmers all around the world have become dependent on it to protect their crops. There were fears in 2021 that the cost of the active ingredient in this product, which is mostly made in China, would double in a short period of time. In 2021, a gallon of glyphosate in the US cost about $11. But in 2022, the cost has gone up to $20 a gallon. There are several factors that account for the serious price jump for weed killers. One is the ongoing labor shortage at many ports around the world that don't have enough workers to unload the ships or drive the delivery trucks. This large price increase has put a lot of pressure on farmers who were already struggling to make a living. Farms, like other businesses, often have no choice but to pass on their increased costs to consumers. And this is one of the reasons grocery store food prices will keep rising. WTO. WTF.
Tell me, what is the very best that you can do?
The World Trade Organization is supposed to help make life better for people around the world. But sometimes it just makes things worse. The WTO apparently has the authority to limit the amount of wheat and corn stockpiles countries can keep on hand. This rule is supposed to help smaller, less competitive countries compete with the likes of the United States and the European Union. Even if the international organization means well, the WTO's rule is hurting a lot of people by artificially limiting the supply of basic foods that are available to eat. Available stockpiles of grains like wheat and corn could be the difference between starving and not starving for people in poorer countries. But it isn't just the WTO whose actions have impacted the food supply. Some countries have decided to take matters into their own hands. In December of 2021, Argentina was one country that decided to cap its wheat and corn exports to protect itself from food shortages. This was an important step because Argentina is the world's second largest exporter of corn. The United States is the largest. Argentina is the largest exporter of wheat to Latin America. Food is a serious business, and countries are taking steps to protect their populations. Fever pitch.
We tried that with swine flu, and all we did was get healthy people scared.
Over the last 3 years, it's been pretty hard to escape the global pandemic. This has gotten an unprecedented amount of media attention and has affected the lives of billions of people around the world. However, there is a lesser-known disease that has caused a lot of problems in the global food chain. 2.5 years ago, China was in the middle of a deadly and destructive outbreak of a strain of swine flu. The disease ravaged the country's pig population and put a lot of farmers out of business. The effects of swine flu drove up the price of pork on the world commodity markets, but it also succeeded in driving up the price of corn. Chinese farmers used to feed their pigs with swill, which is pretty much whatever scraps of food the pig farmers have on hand. This questionable source of pig feed is believed to have led to the outbreak of swine flu. So farmers have switched to corn to feed their pigs, and this has contributed to the steady rise in corn prices for everyone. And there is no sign the price will be coming down soon. Where's the beef?
Steaks cooked medium rare.
Can I get my steak cooked just
That wasn't no question.
Anyone who shops at grocery stores knows that the price of meat, like so many other things, has risen considerably over the last year. Inflation is one of the short-term reasons for price increases, but there are other reasons grocery store prices will keep rising. The pandemic and shutdowns led to a number of meat processing plants suspending operations for weeks at a time. A Wendy's commercial that aired in the 1980s featured a grumpy elderly woman who kept asking, "Where's the beef?" If the character appeared in a commercial today, she would probably be happy instead of grumpy. She would learn that there are more people eating beef around the world than ever before. As people in developing countries raise their standards of living, they're eating more meat. This includes chicken, beef, and especially pork. Most nutrition experts consider this increase in protein consumption from meat to be a positive development. The protein in meat is of a higher quality than the protein from other sources, such as beans. However, there are others who see this development in a decidedly negative light because they argue meat production puts too many stresses on the environment. The war economy.
Needless war. A war chosen by one man, to be very blunt.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine in January 2022 has caused a lot of death and destruction, and has also caused serious disruptions to the global food supply. Ukraine is often called the breadbasket of Europe because of its massive wheat and corn crops. Ukraine grows more than 10% of the world's wheat supply. Russia is also a big grain exporter and accounts for almost another 20%. Both countries' ability to provide these crucial crops to feed millions of people has been severely hampered by the ongoing conflict. In April 2022, agricultural commodity prices hit near record levels and will likely go even higher if the war drags on for many more months or even years. The price of wheat has risen 110% over the last year, and the price of corn has increased by an astonishing 140%. Wheat and corn are grains used in countless products, from breakfast cereal to cookies and pasta. All of these products are facing price increases as the commodity prices rise. Food prices were already going up before Russia invaded Ukraine, but the fighting has severely disrupted Ukraine's agriculture and the operation of its Black Sea ports. A quick end to the war would help stabilize world markets and ease price increases. Going Dutch.
Welcome to the Netherlands.
I'm in the Netherlands right now.
Yep.
It's a little hard to believe, but the small country known as the Netherlands is the second largest food exporter overall after the United States and the top exporter of meat in Europe. Although China produces more food than the US, it doesn't export as much because it needs a lot of it for domestic consumption. Dutch farmers started protesting their government's plan to reset agricultural production in the country. Farmers driving tractors disrupted roads, distribution centers, and ports. The angry farmers' rallying cry of "No farms, no food" should concern everyone. The government insists its plan is meant to address global warming, but farmers see it as a mortal threat to their livelihoods. The plan to reduce nitrogen oxide and ammonia emissions in the name of environmentalism could devastate the Dutch farming industry. A decline in agriculture in the Netherlands would put a lot of pressure on an already precarious global food supply. Perhaps Dutch officials and green activists haven't considered the actual consequences of their ambitious plans. They don't seem to realize that shutting down farming will be one of the top reasons grocery store food prices will keep rising. The Netherlands should have seen the unrest coming because a similar plan was actually implemented in Sri Lanka, and the resulting chaos brought down the government. Bread lines.
If you've been to the grocery store in the past week or so, you've probably noticed the bare shelves.
During the shutdowns, many of us had the memorable experience of waiting in lines to go inside grocery stores so we could do our usual food shopping. This was not a pleasant experience and should have reminded, or at least taught, everyone how important and how precarious the global food supply chain really is. Continued disruptions of this crucial sector of the world's economy will likely have very negative consequences. In the United States, lines disappeared pretty quickly, and even though hoarding behavior occurred, it was also short-lived. However, in 2022, many areas are still experiencing some shortages, and food prices continue to rise. The trucking industry is one of the most important components of the economy that was ravaged by the shutdowns and mandates. Trucking companies are still experiencing a serious driver shortage that is likely to last for years. Container ships had adequate crews, but many of them sat idle at ports for weeks at a time. Understaffed port facilities were often overwhelmed, and the backlog filled the docks with thousands of shipping containers. Many of the kinks in the supply chain have been worked out, but it's still not working the way it was before the pandemic. Adding fuel to the fire is the price of gasoline and diesel, because both are up significantly over the past year. These increased fuel prices have contributed to higher costs all along the supply chain.